Hey everyone, hope you're all doing real well today. Today I'm going to be talking about using the three main data frame manipulation methods, or contexts as we call them in polars, namely column selection, or the select method, adding columns, or the with columns method, and then also filtering records using the filter method. So this is the program right here, and we start the program off as we normally would by reading in the needed libraries. I'm going to be using the polars library today. These are just some options to make the output look a little bit better and more readable. I'd be redirecting my output to a text log just to make it easier to read. And the data set I'm going to be using today to demonstrate all this is going to be a data set of county and state level population estimates from the United States Census Bureau. Here's what it looks like right here. So just the geographies are right here, and then the various population figures are in the columns. I'm just using this because it's very easy to read and understand. The columns I'm going to be keeping are the geography columns, so SEMLIB, region, division, state, county, state name, county name, and then just the population estimate in 2020. And then I'm just changing the changing the columns into the needed data types. In this case, just string for the geographies. And so to maybe get to the main content of this video, so contexts and data frame methods, what are they? And so the way you manipulate data in polars is a little bit different than in pandas or in other data science libraries. You manipulate data in polars using series methods called expressions. And these expressions are nested within data frame methods called contexts. And these contexts, or these data frame methods, determine the kind of data frame they're going to be returned by your operations. So namely, in the examples I'm going to show below, they can be a data frame with fewer columns in the original data set, more columns in the original data set, and then fewer records if we use the filter method. And so we'll see some examples of that below. And so here I have just some definitions of the three main contexts of the polars library. These are the ones that I find myself using most often. And so the first one is called select. And if you're familiar with a database library like Oracle Data Frame or maybe SQL Server, MySQL, something like that, select is exactly as it would sound. What select does is it returns a data frame or a data set of the columns you select or create. And this is key, it's going to drop everything else. So if we only select 3 columns, or maybe 1 or 2 columns from this original data frame, those are the columns that are going to be returned in the new data frame we create. And so with columns is kind of the flip side of that coin. What with columns does is it returns a data frame of all of the existing columns in the data frame in addition to the ones that you create. So in other words, it doesn't get rid of anything, we're only adding to it. And then filter is a little bit different. And what this does is it returns a data frame with a subset of rows. In other words, we put a logical test into the filter method. If it evaluates it true, we keep that record. If it doesn't, it excludes the record. And by record, of course, we're just referring to a row in this file that we're reading in. And we'll of course show an example of that. So I'll start out by talking about the difference between .select and with columns in filter. So to give an example of select, what I'm doing right here is I'm creating a new data frame called select test out of the original data frame. This data frame I'm calling counties, and I'm calling it counties because this is a data set of county level population estimates. And then you just type in .select to use the data frame method. And then you list the columns you want to create. So we have state name, county name, and population estimate. So we're keeping these 3 columns, and then we're creating a new column right here. And if you're unfamiliar with this .win syntax, don't worry, we'll talk about that in a subsequent video somewhere along the line. But just know that what's going on here is that if this population estimate column is greater than 1 million, then we're going to create a new column called size, and we're going to assign it a value of big. And otherwise, we're just going to assign it a value of small if it's less than 1 million. So I'll go ahead and run this, and that'll give us an idea of what .select does. And so if you've been following along, you should probably know that this is going to create a data frame of 4 columns. These 3 columns and this new one called size that we're creating. And so the way we run this Yeah, I don't usually use Jupyter Notebook or anything like that. I'm kind of old school, I like the command line. It's called 3context.py. Okay, there we go. And there we go. We see we have a data frame of 4 columns. And we have state name, county name, population estimate, and size. And we see that this record right here has a population estimate of 5 million, which makes it bigger than a million, which gives it a value of big in the size column. Otherwise, these are all small. Whoop. And so the next method we'll talk about is with columns. And as I mentioned above, with columns is more or less the flip side of the coin with dot select. And so with columns, it's going to keep all of the columns in that original data frame by default, and we're only going to add to it. So what we see right here is I do the exact same recode as I did above in this new data frame I'm creating, but we're not listing any of the existing columns in here. And that's because it's going to, what with columns is going to do is it's going to keep all of those existing columns, and we're only going to add to it with this column that we're creating called size. And so hopefully this should make the distinction between these two methods very clear. So I'll go ahead and run this. Okay, and so below here is the results of the with columns data frame method, and we see that we have all of the existing columns in addition to the one that we created. And so generally speaking, select is very useful when you have a whole bunch of additional stuff in your data set that you don't want to keep and you just kind of want to get rid of. And with columns is very essential when you need all of the columns in that data set and you need to add to it in order to kind of get to the end result of your analysis. All right, and the final context I'll talk about, or the final data frame method I'll talk about, is dot filter. And dot filter is very simple, but it's also very useful. And so the way you use dot filter is you just start with the input data set again, and then you type in dot filter, and you just put a logical test between the parentheses. And so here what we're doing is we're testing if this column called sumliv is equivalent to 040. So if we go to our data frame in here, we notice that some of these records have a sumliv value of 040, and some of them have a value of 050. And so what 040 corresponds to is a state level of geography. What these 050 records refer to are county level records. And so what we're going to try to do here is put together a data frame of just state level records. And maybe I'll put that in the column. A data frame of states exclude counties. That'll make it a little bit more explicit. And so again, if this expression right here evaluates to true, then we're going to keep the record. Otherwise, it's going to be excluded. So we'll go ahead and run this. Make sure, yeah, that's commented out. And we'll take a look at the results. All right, so here's the result of the filter method, and we see that each row has a value of 040, which means that it's a state record. You can see the state name. Definitely lets us know that these are states that we're looking at right here. 21 million in Florida, my goodness. And just to maybe be absolutely sure that we're only getting states in here, we'll just go ahead and print out the full data frame. There should only be about 50 or so in there, so it shouldn't be too overwhelming. All right. So yep, we have a data frame with just all our states here. And if we wanted to do state level analysis, filter would be a very good method to do that. And from here, we could just move on with just our state records. Okay, guys, that's the 3 main data frame methods and polars that I find myself using most often to take on some of my data science task work. So thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a good rest of your day.